Language and social power. Before we move on to a discussion of languages in education and language policy and the impact it has on relative poverty of individuals, we need to come to this basic assumption, which is supported by a wide literature, that language is definitely related to social power. So when you see a language and when people use certain terms, you would come to realize that language is never a historical. Always language by being used in different cultures, by assimilating the ideologies of the given time, by being used in certain local spaces, and by virtue of shifting to different places, the influxes in the language, the change in the vocabulary, and the way we talk about different things, this is all related to social power. And these discourses, as we talk about things, these are called discourses, actually construct the reality for the people. So they don't just reflect the reality of the culture, they actually construct the reality. So languages are an important tool to construct reality, as we said, and language is an important tool also to understand that reality also. So it is always implicated in issues of power. Language is implicated in subtle exclusion or inclusion of someone. For instance, to take a very minor example, think of your homes. Think of the time when you switch to one language and which two of you might share while the third person standing over there might not share, whether it's a regional language or English language. So you just quietly, while the person is still there, you exclude that person from the conversation, because that person, since he or she cannot understand you, cannot participate in whatever you are talking about. So this is a tool of exclusion, it's a tool of inclusion. If people know a lingua franca, that is, if you know Sindhi or Punjabi and I know Pashto, and we have this link language like Urdu or English, so then even we will be able to connect to each other. So you can also include others by the use of certain kind of language. And this is done not just in wider social life, also it is done in specific disciplines. So when you see doctors talking to each other, when you see lawyers talking to each other, they use a specific language or a register, as we call, and which excludes others from understanding it. So only a lawyer can understand that kind of jargon. Only a doctor can understand the register that other doctors use. In any case, what we are saying is that language is related to social hierarchy. So the linguistic hierarchy set by the language policy is actually reflecting the social hierarchy of its speakers. So if the elite in a given society have access to English and speak English very fluently, and there are very few of them, then even you'll see that the functions that are given to English in the language policy will be those functions which are of a higher order or which are very, very important. And if there might be a majority speaking local languages, but if they don't have the social power, and most of them are poor or marginalized, they will not find any role of their language in the given language policy, or they will not see that there is any role for their languages in the schools that they send their children to. So languages are related to participation within education in the wider social processes. You go to a doctor, you don't understand the language of the doctor, or you come from this rural area and you don't even know Urdu, for instance, and the doctor can't understand you. You can't access health information. You can't possibly even have a proper diagnosis. So this is a major and a very real issue which is often ignored. Coming to education, for instance, you don't understand the medium of instruction in which the teacher is explaining something. How would you learn? So that is a basic issue. So if a child is coming from a home where Urdu is not used, you put the child in a school where suddenly everything is in Urdu. So how does the child learn if the child does not even understand what the teacher is saying? So it's related to wide issues of wider access and self-actualization. And please remember, as Dr. Rahman says, it's a political issue. So there's a lot of politics going on in terms of how ideologies or linguistic ideologies play about. So it's not just pragmatic concerns. It's about specific political power that is at work and who is at the specific status, and the languages that those speakers speak will have a status relative to their own social status. So languages, that means, have a symbolic power, and this is Pierre Bourdieu that is talking about. And he says people use languages to dominate over others, and this is a kind of a subtle domination. And because it is so subtle that it becomes naturalized with the use of time, and when something becomes naturalized, it becomes common sense. And when it becomes common sense, you don't question it. And that is how this kind of domination goes on. So what we are arguing is that languages, either they are in the languages in education or in language policy, they need to be studied in relation to issues of development and poverty. We need to go beyond education and see what is their impact in terms of issues of development itself, because education also, yes, it is also for this integrative reason of learning for its own sake, but it also has this instrumental value for people. People learn or go to schools because they want to use that education to be somewhere. And the question is, what role do their languages play in this self-actualization process? So this is essentially related to issues of social justice and equity.